Hello, music lovers! Today, I got my Olivia Rodrigo drip on because we are so excited to talk about Olivia Rodrigo's new album, You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love. It's an awesome album. Many people are calling it maybe the album of the year. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what makes this album so great, as always. This is Olivia's third album. You know, first we had Sour, Guts, and now this. Again, as all three, this is produced by Dan Nigro, one of the best of the business. Dan did an excellent job on this album. We're going to talk about that. And what's important to know about this album is that during the making of it, Olivia was in a relationship until they broke up, and that guides its concept. This is a concept album about this journey where in Drop Dead, she finds this guy that she wants to be with and she's desiring him. And then from Stupid Song to Purple, we have this journey of being in the relationship and it uplifting her. And The Cure, we have this journey where this climax, this big point where she discovers that this relationship isn't providing her what she feels like she needs. And then everything after is this kind of journey of breaking up and this depressive stage. And then this realization that she should kind of, focus on herself, care about herself, and get in relationships with people that are actually like good for her rather than just being in one to be in one. So it is a concept album, which is new for her. This is a very different album for her because it's a very different from her first two albums, which have this strong purple branding, but it's also not absent from the branding at all. Rather than the world possessing this vibrant purple color, the world around her is this like gross pastel blue that's very unsaturated and sad, kind of lifeless. And in the album, she kind of talks about this color blue and the color purple because she uses blue throughout the album to communicate her saddening life and lifeless surroundings. Like in the Stupid Song, she communicates how much she hates her life and surroundings and how she doesn't participate in having fun, and how her life is mundane because she says that New York City has never looked so blue. And she describes this need for a red, which is a color of love, in order to make purple, because purple is such an important part of her branding in her life. And so she wants to make purple, and she needs that red. She needs counterparts. She needs romance. And so in Purple, she speaks about this. Once she enters this relationship, it brings her purple from her blue and his red. And she just like breaks apart the color purple like that, as a combination of red and blue in many ways, obviously in that song, but also in the album cover. She has this pink dress on and the sky is blue. If you combine the two colors, you're going to get some form of purple. And even in the Drop Dead music video, she has a pink and a blue dress. And I think the point of this was to focus on the idea of combination, since the idea of relationship is such a revolving part of the album's themes and what happens in it. And so relationship, companionship, this plus that is such a big part of the album. And so she wanted to kind of break those apart. And I think that was really cool. Now, one of the coolest things about this album to me is the instrumentation, because her and Dan Nigro use instrumentation in such a clever way to give off different emotions and fit different vibes. Like in the love songs, there is this very optimistic, summery vibe to the instruments. It's very saturated. Pairing along with this, her singing is passionate, optimistic, and powerful. And she uses dramatic contrast with different instrumentations and different energies to show her moods. Like in Stupid Song, she describes how her life is terrible and boring, and she opens up with her complaints of life and pairs this with this super emotional single note piano that's just playing with her voice. And all that does is it makes that there's not a lot of instrumentation, there's not a lot going on, so it puts focus on what she's saying and her emotions. And once we get to this point in the chorus where she starts singing about this love, her singing gathers a lot more energy, and the piano starts adding chords, and then after that, there's a bunch more instrumentation that breaks out. And what this does is it places us in her shoes, where Olivia, throughout this album, has this journey where she doesn't like herself, she has low self-esteem, she feels like she needs to be in a relationship to find happiness. She gets in that relationship. Eventually, she finds out that it's not bringing her the happiness that she desires, that this guy is not the cure, and then she breaks up, and she's really sad. And then she's like, well, maybe I should not be in a relationship just for the sake of it. And she reevaluates, and she's still sad, but she's more mature at the end. That's sort of the journey. But at the moment of this song, she is in a perspective where her life and her happiness, her saturation, her color to her life is sort of dependent upon being in this relationship. And so she and Dan Nyga craft that because at the start of the song, it's kind of bare bones. You know, you could call it more boring if you want. I wouldn't call it boring necessarily, but it's less energetic, it's less lively. And when she starts talking about this guy, life starts exploding with all this instrumentation and this energy in her singing. And that contrast puts us in sort of the shoes of the contrast in her life, where at some point she felt bare bones, but then once things, you know, kind of went alive, she felt that life kind of rushing around her. And so the instrumentation, the rushing behind it, puts us kind of in her shoes. And the instrumentation just meets the moment. Like another example of this is in the song Less. It's this Less is like one of the like most sad post-breakup songs I've heard, and it's the sad post-breakup song of the album, which features no layering harmonies, which is pretty abnormal for Olivia's career. She's pretty known for having like a lot of layering melodies and harmonies, but there was nothing in it. There was none of that. It was just her singing with the piano throughout the whole song. And this places so much focus on her rather than the instruments. It places more focus on her words, on her lyrics, which are so emotionally devastated, and it allows her to be the focal point of the song, which is very important for what that song needs. Her singing, you know, also meets the moment in that song, as there's so many breaths which were previously not recorded a lot throughout the album, but are very common in that song. And her voice almost breaks out very often, mimicking this kind of crying tone, you know, where you're hyperventilating and your voice is cracking. It's really smart. It's awesome. Like if any of you guys are artists, including stuff like that, like whispers, breaths, voice cracks, can do a lot towards mimicking this kind of crying tone. If you ever want to make a sad song, genius thing to do, and Dan Nyga and Olivia did an excellent job with that in that song and throughout this album. The way they also use guitars to communicate jadedness in songs like My Way, which is a rebellious song against a girl who's hitting on her man, or in The Cure, which is, you know, the breaking apart of the album, they create so much jadedness through the guitar, and they edit her voice in these songs to be very hazy or distorted to add that extra, you know, grit and oomph, really, you know, mimicking that kind of rebellious rock sound. So that was really smart from them. I have to say, this is her most sonically creative work, which has awoken the critic world, which hates everything that isn't super sophisticated and it's maybe a little typical sounding. It's kind of awoken the world to pay attention to Olivia now because, you know, there's these saturated synths that remind you of New Order or Talking Heads or The Cure. And they're like, oh, I love those groups. Oh, wow, it's not like that normal pop music that she makes. Wow, I guess, wow, this is so cool. But it's like, Olivia's always been that artist, that girl that they're talking about right now. She's always been that girl. Like, people just tuned it out because some people hate on every pop album that's not super original in sound, even though it really doesn't make that much of a difference as far as the quality of the product. It's just maybe something that fits your preference more. It's like, because like she like dropped one of the best pop songs ever on both of her first two projects, in Driver's License and in Vampire. Like, she's been like that. But the instrumentation is super clever in the fact that in the first album, in Sour, it's kind of like all over the place. There are mimics. It's actually what I'm talking about now with her using and Dan Nyga using instrumentation for emotion is present in that album. Where in Brutal we have this kind of rebellious F you know, the industry, my childhood sucked song, and it's super punky. And then in Traitor we had this more intimate song of her communicating feeling sad, feeling betrayed, and the song is a lot slower. The instrumentation is a lot less heavy. In Driver's License, the instrumentation is very out the way until the part where she starts describing this guy, and it gets a lot more energy to sort of, at one point, give a lot of energy towards this relationship that she had. But when she's singing about her own life, to kind of strip it away and make it more emotional, more intimate, make her feel kind of alone, I want to make a really good video about Driver's License. I have a lot to say about that song. So, yeah, but they do a lot of that, like Enough for You. Very stripped, just her singing acoustically makes it more emotional. Jealousy, she's a lot more punky again because she's kind of jaded, kind of being a bit rebellious in the lyrics, and then the theme, so the song fits it. In Guts, she kind of takes that rebellious punky sound and makes it more prevalent. It's more of an overall sound of the album. You have your ballads and songs like Vampire, even though Vampire carries its jadedness within the lyrics and the progression that she sings. But it has a overall more punky style, even though there are your ballads with Vampire, Lacey, Teenage Dream. But she's kind of always done this, where in her discography, have always done this where the emotion meets the moment. I will say it's a lot different in this album, where again the synths are more clever. It is more original and different from the typical pop radio sound in this album. I don't think this album's gonna get the pop radio plays that the first two had for that reason, just because it's not really made exactly for that avenue. There's a lot less focus on making hits in this album than the prior two, and a lot more focus on just delivering on emotion and themes. Now, I will give credit to the fact that this is, if we're talking about development, this is Olivia's most emotionally deep and mature album. The lyrics are just so raw and vulnerable. Like, she describes this deep dependency on this man for her happiness by saying that without him, all her colors are flat. She's a sad shell of a woman who has maggots for brains. Like, very strong language to describe yourself. So, like, self-hating that it's insane to hear. And in the breakup side of the album, there are some of the most, like, vulnerable, sad lyrics that I have ever heard. And what's wrong with me? She says her head is spinning, her stomach is sick, she can't eat, she can't sleep, and she can't get out of bed. Like, holy crap, Olivia. I've heard few people to be able to be that vulnerably depressed in their work. Like, you can't eat, you can't get out of bed, you can't sleep. Like, girl, what? I've heard few people who can write like that. Never heard anyone of her size be able to say something so vulnerable like that before now. I don't think I have. Her resentment is so strong too. Like, I wish you loved me less. I regret you. I resent you. Like, she's so unfiltered, which is crazy because we know who she dated. She dated a public figure. Usually, public relationships, when they end, very PR, very quiet, because you can't really attack public people publicly without causing controversy. But she just doesn't care. She doesn't care at all. She's so unfiltered. And her being unfiltered is part of what makes these lyrics so easy to relate to. The lyrics are very palatable and not harmfully specific, which makes them very relatable. The most specific description of her relationship was that the boy had floppy hair. Like, this is a very vague description. And it allows us as listeners to better relate to it. If she was super specific when talking about this guy, and she was like, he was 214 centimeters tall and lives in Kentucky, and his mom's name was Janet, and he had a pimple on his butt, it'd make it hard for us to apply our own situations. But now that she's being descriptive with the emotions, with the things that aren't super specific, but on the specific things is very vague, it allows people, when any girl that's listening to this, to like be like, oh, I went through this bad relationship. Oh, let me think of that guy, that relationship when I listen to the album. Now I can put myself in her shoes and understand what she's saying. Or any guy can do the same if they're a bit creative. Like, a lot of people have gone through bad relationships, bad heartbreaks. A lot of people have gone through getting in relationships when they're desperate, when they have low self-esteem, and that going badly and poorly for them. And so it makes it so relatable how unfiltered she is and how non-specific she is. Again, the storytelling in this album is awesome because, the album, again, it goes through this phase where she finds this guy that she wants to be with. She talks about how her life sucks without a relationship. She feels like she needs one. She enters it. Her life sucks when she's not with this guy, but she's with them and her life is so uplifted. She goes to this point where she's like, I feel like I need this from him. I'm not getting it. Oh, why doesn't he do this? I wish he would do this for me. He only does it when I ask it from him. And, the relationship ends. She goes to a super depressed stage. And then she self-reflects and ends off not in a happy mood. She still ends off being hurt, but maybe has matured a bit in her approach to life. That's the concept. And it follows it to a T, right? It follows it to a T. But the thing that's so brilliant is that Olivia kind of foreshadows that her relationship is going to end. She foreshadows that the relationship issues exist before the breaking point of the album. In side A, you have this section is called A Girl So in Love. And side B, you have the sections called You Seem Pretty Sad. And so up until The Cure, it's supposed to be all happy, all about how her life is amazing because of this relationship. She's a girl so in love. And then side B is supposed to be about how she's pretty sad because the relationship ends. So everything after The Cure is this very sad point, and everything before is this very happy point. But among that happy point within the relationship, she foreshadows that these relationships issues are going to come. Yet we ignore the warning signs just like she does because she's so relatable. In the song Stupid Song, she talks about how she hates her life and how she needs someone to bring happiness. Like, that's a warning sign. It's hard to have a successful relationship and have someone love you if you don't love yourself. That's a warning sign, She also says that she is a car speeding down the boulevard without a brake, and meaning that she will crash, right? She's going too fast. She's a car speeding, going too fast without a brake. She can't stop. She's going to crash. Things will go bad. That's a warning sign. In Maggots for Brains, she talks about how she hates herself and needs this love to feel happiness. That's a warning sign. Because once that honeymoon phase is over, she's going to stop feeling as loved as she did once. She's going to stop feeling as infatuated as she did once. And the fact that she doesn't love herself is going to really start becoming an issue. That's a warning sign. In Purple, we covered already how she breaks apart Purple as being her blue and his red. She needs both to make Purple, but she foreshadows the relationship ending by saying at the end of the song that her and her lover will melt together until everything turns black. Black is a color that is dark, lifeless, created by combining many different colors. In this context, not just red and blue, because that would make purple, but different colors, which could mean different issues, different traits, different imperfections, relationship issues. And she foreshadows that happening until things turn black, things turn lifeless, things turn dark. And this happens right before the song The Cure. And yet, when The Cure happens, her breaking point still feels so powerful, so shocking, because we kind of buy her perspective, right? And The Cure absolutely delivers at this point, because the song does this thing where it just builds up so strong to the end. The emotion builds up so strong, and it makes the moment so powerful. And this is all aided that because throughout the album, she is so raw and personal that we relate to her position, even if it was illogical. Because, I understand you, Olivia. Love, passion, desire, they're just so strong that many of us have been in that position where we chased after a relationship that we knew had so many warning signs. We knew it wouldn't work out, but we chased after it because our deepest desire was in front of us. And so we ignored those. We just went after it, right? And so we buy her position. We understand it. And we know it's not going to work out, but we're still so bought into this story and this emotion that her and Dan Igo craft through the instrumentation, through the energy levels, through the lyrics, to where, we're given that connotation that her life is doing so much better now that she's in a relationship, because that's how she describes it. That's the perspective that she puts us in, even though we know that it won't be eternal. And so it's just so shocking and so powerful once it comes in The Cure. And that's all delivered just because of how raw, how unprocessed, how unfiltered she is throughout the album. And she just does such an amazing job of describing her frantic position, which is something that's so hard to rationalize because the emotions are so strong. It's hard to wrap your heads around these deeper thoughts, these deeper realities among something so emotional like that. But she does such an amazing job of it. And she ends the album with this self-reflection that she doesn't need to find relationships for the sake of simply being in one. She talks about that in The Cure. In Expectations, she talks about how she'll wait until she finds someone, a worthy person, for her next relationship. And I think that's a really great full circle moment. It really crafts this journey in a full developed timeline, a full window, in only a 50-minute album. And I think that's a huge part of what makes the album so great. We relate to her position. We understand what she's going through. She offers us something that's very, clever, but it's not a full, she wasn't in the album and her whole life is turned around. She's still sad. She's still hurt because she's a real person. She's human. It's been months since she's broken up. She's not solved every issue, but she has matured in a lot of ways from it. She learned in a lot of ways, and she goes through this very, very deep low point that many of us have felt like we've been at in our life. And so we relate to her journey. And I think that's just part of what makes it so great. Now, I will say, to give a complaint to the album, Guts and Sour have better songs at their peaks and at their mids. Just from a pure, what song I'd rather listen to, I'd rather listen to a lot of the songs in Guts and Sour. This is her least melodically catchy album. And I was kind of worried about that with the how creative she was saying that she would be with the instrumentation, that she wouldn't match her ability to write great pop songs with the more creative direction. And she did a good job of it. She did a really great job of it. But she didn't deliver in the melodies in the same way that she did maybe in Sour and Guts. So that would be my major complaint for the album, would just be that I think that as a song basis, it's probably not her most, her best of her work. But what might be the best of her work is that this might be her most consistent album. There's not a bad song. It's entertaining throughout. There's a lot of love put into each song, into the track list, a lot of effort, a lot of execution, which makes it really great. And I mean, it does mean something, the fact that she was so creative in her sonic direction. I think people overrate that fact. I think it's possible for an album to be basic sounding and still be the best album of all time. I think people overrate that fact. But, I mean, it is something that matters. It is something that gives this album a lot of life, a lot of meaning. And so that's really great. And in every album, something that amazes me is, oh my gosh, people complain that Olivia can't sing. But her voice, she uses it so cleverly to conduct different emotions and different perspectives. I want to play a clip of me talking about this. I did a reaction to the album. I had to scrap it. But I'm talking about this in Stupid Song. I talked earlier about how in Stupid Song, they start off the song super bare bones, where it's just her singing, and it's not super powerful. And then the chorus, when she starts describing this relationship with the guy, her singing becomes a lot more energized, a lot more powerful. And that technique that she uses crafts a story. It crafts two different worlds within the song. And it's just so clever. So I want to play a clip right now of me talking about the song Stupid Song and talking about what I like about her singing. Let me play that real quick. And Olivia is such a good singer, and I hate that she has the reputation of being a bad singer. I think it's because there's a lot of videos of her performing live, and her voice doesn't translate well live. And sort of the takeaway is, oh, well, it's just the studio that makes her sound well. She can't sing without auto-tune and processing. That's such a stupid... I mean, that's dumb. You can hear when voices are kind of carried by that. Auto-tune is an instrument in its own way, and so there's no flack to singers who use that as an instrument. But people who aren't in the music world often think that auto-tune is this fix-all, be-all that's never existed before and always exists now. Pitch correction existed before the program auto-tune. It's become easier to sing, sure. I'm sure that's true. I think overall music has just moved away from having such a strong voicing being necessary. I think we saw this a lot with the Beatles, where I think what made the Beatles so popular, a lot of it came from the fact that their music was easy to sing. But then we went away from that for a while. We heard very great singers take over the rock scene. We had Journey with Steve Perry. We had Queen. We had Freddie Mercury. And then we had Michael Jackson, who was a great singer. The grunge singers, we had strength to their voice, especially Lane Staley. And then Britney came around, and we kind of went back to this era of, well, actually, the voice is an instrument and can have so many different sounds. And I think we kind of went away from the need of having a super big voice in pop music and went towards using it more as an instrument. And Taylor kind of took it to a different level, where Taylor is a great singer but doesn't have an impressive range, and that makes her music easy to sing along to, and that makes it a really big hit. Because compared to like Ariana, it's hard to sing an Ariana song. Is it hard to sing a Taylor song? No. And that makes it so much that makes it very digestible. And that's great. And I think people have this perception of pop music that pop singers can't sing. Olivia, if you ever listen to her studio recordings, is an excellent singer. And maybe some of that is processing. I'm sure it helps. It does help. Autotune does help. Producers know how to do stuff with artists. And producers could make an artist sing who couldn't sing. But you can hear her technique in her music. Her belting was super strong there. It was great. I don't think Olivia's the best live singer. But I think you can tell through her music that she is a great singer. You can hear the technique there. It's not like she's just singing crazy ranges and crazy pitches, and her pitches are super on point. That's not the appeal to her music. And that's why I say, yeah, she probably is aided a lot by processing. Dan Nigro is an amazing producer. But I think what makes her voice so strong is her techniques, and it is her ability to belt and draw strength from what is really a fragile voice. Olivia doesn't have a super strong voice. It's a little fragile, and she's able to have so much technique to make it strong when it needs to be. And I think that creates a really great juxtaposition in her music. As we hear the end of that chorus, there's kind of this fragileness, this kind of like squeak vocal crack that's very interesting, and I love that. Um, as it kind of shows character to her person, where she protrudes, she shows a lot of strength, but in reality, she is someone who needs to be taken care of, someone who like can feel emotions. Like if you're mean to her, if you're rude to her, she's gonna feel that. That'll make her sad. It shows so much emotion. That was kind of the genius of Driver's License when it came out, was the way that she was able to show weakness in her voice at the end of the choruses in isolation to show how hurt she was, but also show strength in the bridge when in the singing of red lights, stop signs, I still see your face. She was super strong there to create strength and importance to what she was singing about. So she was strong when she was with this guy, when she was envisioning this guy. Without him, she was super weak. And that juxtaposition in her voice, her ability to draw strength through her voice when she has kind of a naturally quiet, softer voice, shows her character. She draws strength through resilience, yet she is actually a fragile person who can be hurt, and that's where she draws her emotion in her music from. And I think that plays well for her career. She was a child actor. She had to, she talks a lot in her interviews about how that was hard on her, how she didn't have a real childhood. She talks in Brutal about how people were like using her in the industry, and how she didn't get to have a real childhood. That was kind of a focal point of Sour. And I think she shows this a lot with her voice, where she protrudes strength, and that's in her character, in her rebellion, within her love for characters like Courtney Love, Avril Lavigne, Alanis Morissette. But she also is a super emotionally saturated person, and she can actually like feel like very heavy emotions. She's not as rebellious and as strong as she really puts on. And I think she does a lot of that with her voice and Dan Nigro and how he produces it, and I think it's awesome. So yeah, that was a long clip, but I really wanted to play it because I like how I talked about it in that clip. I had to scrap that video. My camera kept freezing. My computer was just like doing too much at once, so I had to scrap it. Unfortunately, there was a lot of great things I said in there that I really wish I could put in a reaction, because I think I was catching on to some things that were like very important to talk about. Maybe I'll upload a short or two if I find time. Other parts that aren't messed up. But my favorite songs in this album, it has to be The Cure. It has to be The Cure. The Cure, top 4, Olivia, probably. Maybe top 5. Like, top 3 are Vampire, Driver's License, and Deja Vu. This is probably 4. Like, if you want to tell me Good For You is better, maybe. So maybe this is 5, but, like, I don't know about that. The Cure is probably just better. Like, the emotion, the importance that is in that track, it's just amazing. It's just amazing. My second favorite song is Stupid Song. Man, I love that song. I love the emotion that's poured throughout it. What's Wrong With Me? That song with Robert Smith. Oh my gosh. First of all, I love how they produced Robert Smith's voice to mimic the Cure sound. Super cool. It's such a cool duo between them two, from production, from execution wise. Her lyrics in that song are devastating too. Absolutely devastating. I love hearing a male voice, a male to female pop duo sound. It's like so sweet. It feels so awesome. It reminds me of so many great duos just like that. Like, it reminds me of the Favors from, I think it was last year, where they released their first album, Phineas and Ash. A lot of good songs in that album. It reminds me of a lot of good songs. It reminds me of Rumors, to be honest. Like, there's so many great examples of like this kind of sweet sounding between a male and a female singing. Rumors is obviously a very jaded example of that, but I mean, I guess the companionship that they bring, I just love the sound of it. It's awesome. I love that song. I also love You Plus Me Equals Hearts. Banging track. Just like all around straight heater. I'm so glad we have one of those in this album, because I would have felt weird with that one, but that song's banging. And Honeybee, I love how like how that song just like sounds like nature. It reminds me a lot of some of the songs on Blue Banisters, the ones that aren't super depressed. I think it's what's the one that she sings, Baby Blue? Is that Cherry Blossoms? What's the name of that song? I don't remember, but it reminds me a lot of that song. Some of those sweeter songs on Blue Banisters. I love that song. I see a lot of people love that song too. So that song's excellent. Um, Now about the album. Yeah, this is her most sonically creative album. This is her most artistic album by far. Like the way in which she paints herself, the way in which she utilizes herself as an artist, the way in which she uses her voicings to craft different emotions, the way in which the instrumentation creates different emotions and is different depending upon the mood and executes the mood, the way in which she has this strong theme, this strong story throughout the album, the way in which her lyrics are super impactful and super mature. Like, this is her most artistic album. It's extremely creative, it's extremely mature, it's extremely saddening and hurtful and emotional. And so I'm gonna give it like an 8.75 to a 9. I guess I'll go with the 9. I don't know. It's hard to say. But I think that's fair to say. Um yeah, that's okay. Um yeah, the only reason it's not higher is just like I don't know if the songs are like that special, you know? For the most it's like that's the only reason it's not higher, because everything else is just like amazingly executed. So yeah, album of the year for this year. It's between this album, You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl So in Love by Olivia Rodrigo, and You by Underscores. It's between the two. I just love I like the songs in You by Underscores a lot more. But it's hard to shake away just how impactful this album is from a start to finish experience, from the emotions and the themes. It's hard to write away that. So I don't know which one's better. It's 1 to 2. It's a toss up for me right now. Um, yeah, it's a tough toss up. But I'm so glad. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad Olivia's finally being treated as the artist that she is, because she has been. I remember I made a short about this. I reacted to Jessie Ware's Super Bloom. I don't know if I'm ever going to edit and upload that video, but I reacted to it. I remember talking in the end about who the top 5 pop artists were at the 2020s, because I think I put Jessie Ware at 5, and I got to the top 3, and I was debating between Billie Eilish, Olivia, and Charlie XCX, and I don't remember who I decided. I think I decided Charlie XCX, if I remember. And then I think after that, I was thinking about it a lot, and I think I ended up thinking about Olivia as being that artist. And I was like, yeah, Olivia probably is it. Like, she's made 2 albums in the 2020s and a deluxe, which she executed amazingly on both. She just hasn't messed up yet. And Olivia Rodrigo 3 came in, and I was really hoping she wouldn't mess up that streak. And she delivered. She is that girl. And I'm so glad people are paying attention to her finally. If it took her being more sonically creative, and maybe taking back on making hits so much and doing more for pushing her artistry, for her to be noticed for who she is, I'm so glad she did it, because she's been that girl, right? She has been that artist. She is that artist. She is the moment, and she is so creative. She is so smart. I think her work is so strong, so impactful. I love it. I think she's so creative. She's so expressive, and I'm so glad she's getting the love right now, because oh my gosh, do people try to hate on her every single step of the way. Have people try to hate on her career for the stupidest things. Like, we talked about the fact that people think that she can't sing because she's not a great live performer. And I think that's because what makes her singing so good is that she doesn't have a super strong voice. And since she's singing about things that are emotional, that translates so well to the studio, because being able to belt out something strong while having a weak voice allows to create the stark contrast. And we talked about that multiple times throughout this album, where she uses that stark contrast, like in Stupid Song. She does it in Driver's License to describe important moments, things that are powerful to her, and give importance to that, while also describing, when she's weak, sort of her isolation, her deep emotional traits, or whatever she's talking about. And so she's been an amazing singer. But because she's not super powerful, that technique, when she has to super belt out while singing and dancing and performing and trying to be heard over all the fans, it just doesn't like translate very well. And so people are like, Olivia can't sing. Like, bro, listen to an Olivia song. It's so amazing, her technique. And it's like, I get it. Yeah, I'm sure some of that has to do with processing and studio takes and auto-tune. And yeah, it's like, yeah, we have ways to make singers sound better. I'm sure that's a thing that happens. But her voice and her techniques are the moment in the song. So I'm so glad that people are kind of realizing that now. And oh my gosh, was the argument are the talks about Olivia being unoriginal so annoying? Like, we're hearing the least of it now. We're still hearing it though. Like, I've seen people say that this album sounds like Chapel Road. Like, girl, duh. Chapel Run's producer is Dan Nigro. Olivia Rodrigo's producer is Dan Nigro. Of course, the productions have similar elements. Girl, duh. That was like I remember when someone told me that Domino by Jessie J sounds like a Katy Perry song. Like, girl, duh. They're produced by the same person. Girl, duh. What are you talking about? And it's just like, oh my gosh, have the talks about Olivia Rodrigo's originality been so annoying? They've been so annoying. Like, Deja Vu is Cruel Summer. It's a copy of Cruel Summer. Like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Like, there's no world where I put on Deja Vu and I'm like, oh my gosh, is that Taylor Swift? Is that Taylor Swift? Is that Taylor Swift? Like, no, it's not. It's not Taylor Swift. It's a completely different song. There's similarities. That's how music works. That's how music works. We've lived for thousands of years. We've made music for thousands of years. Like, you take inspiration from stuff. It's hard to create something that's like completely new. Everything has an inspiration point for the most part in music. Almost everything does have something it's inspired by. And so there's going to be similarities to music that exists already. That's just how it is. So not everything's going to be 100% fully original in every song ever. That's just the way it is. Like, and I hear people be like, I've heard this progression before. This progression sounds like this song. It's like, there's only so many progressions that exist. And there's only so many progressions that make sense in normal context. Like, that makes sense in most contexts. And so there's only so many progressions that exist. At some point, where we're using progressions, you can find a progression. You can be like, oh, well, there's so many songs that sound like this. Like, you remember the 4-string theory, I think it was, where it's like, every pop song has the same progression. Guys, let's just play every pop song into each other. And it was clever, and it was cool to talk about the fact that progressions play such a big part in writing, and to talk about they're so limited. But people didn't extrapolate that to say, oh, well, pop music is so original. Like, bro, that exists in rock too. It exists in so many genres. Progressions, we just don't have that many. There's a finite amount of notes. And so there's a finite amount of progressions you can get from there. That's just how things are. That's the way things are. Invent a new sound for me. Invent a new note for me, okay? Come up with a new note for me, and we can make new songs with it. And so Olivia's gotten terrible flack for that. And it's really frustrating for her because she doesn't deserve that. She's such a clever artist who has executed so much throughout her career. And she's just had so much unfair criticism that's so stupid. It's so stupid. And I'm glad she's finally getting reviewed for the artist that she is in this album. It was an amazing album. I understand why it's broken her out. Amazing album. You seem pretty sad for a girl so in love. Probably album of the year, you know. That's all I have to say. But as always, subscribe to see the next video. Have a good day. God bless. Goodbye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.